So I'm Nancy Chapman. I have to wear a lot of volunteer hats. And so I am a master gardener in Johnson County and a master naturalist. I volunteer with the Giving Grove Orchard, the Kansas City Community Garden. I volunteer with a group that feeds the homeless under the Heart of America Bridge on Tuesday nights. And so my Giving Grove Orchard is 75 trees at peaches or pears and apples mainly, and cherries at 29th and 71 Highway. So I'm really passionate about food insecurity, trees and soil. So those are my biggest go-tos. So today, when I first started as a master gardener in 2007, you're forced to have to, at least we are, get on a hotline 3 times in your first year. And people would call and they would say, gee, I think there's something wrong with my plant. We didn't have the internet to be able to send pictures, and all that other stuff so we could see. And they would say, well, there's this about my plant or that about my plant. And I would say, well, have you tried this? And they said, but you don't understand. I have clay soil. And, you just wanted, your little brain's not saying anything, but you're saying, and so does your neighbor and your other neighbor and the other county and people, within 50-mile radius, we all have clay soil. So, it's like, how do we manage that? How do we work with it? And are there any positives, for the negatives that if we don't do anything that we have? And so that's why I created this presentation. There is a very short 20-minute presentation. This one is probably closer to, I know it's over an hour, because I figured that if you were the general public, which you could be in here, everybody was invited, but if you're general public, you just want to know, just tell me what to do, but not the why. And I'm a person who's always had to know, why does that work? Why does this? Because, and my childhood nickname that my grandfather and everybody called me was how come? Because they said the sky's blue. Well, how come? And so I've always needed to know the why. So this is a little more detail, which is why it's longer. And it's why do we have the soils we have? And why does, spoiler alert, adding compost, organic matter work? So I love all of these, is it Jacob, starts with a T, name, but cartoons, and so I have that. So spoiler alert, how many of you guys, you're all my age or older, so do you remember the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Yes. All right, so what was it that, no matter what, if there was something wrong, he'd get out his Windex and that would fix it. Well, spoiler alert, if you have to leave, if you need to go to the bathroom, if you have to go pick up your kids at school or whatever, the answer is add organic matter, add compost. So the next hour plus, you're going to understand why that works. So, and soil is more than just dirt. Dirt, people say dirt, but soil is a living thing. There are lots of just life in it, and it promotes, and dirt is just kind of dead. It's what, when you go buy a bag of topsoil from the big hardware, big box stores, it's really not soil. There's nothing living in that. It's really good for putting around your foundation because you don't want water and rain going down your foundation after a really dry summer and then freezing in the winter, because that expanding water is what breaks your foundation, puts cracks and stuff. So it's really good for packing in and going right up against, if you're trying to fix the fact that the dirt outside your foundation hasn't, or to fill a post hole or something. But it's not for living organisms, living plants. So, but soil is, like I said, it promotes healthy plants, develops deep, vigorous roots. It increases your drought tolerance, and we're going to talk about why. provides the valuable nutrients, which that's why we always get our, some say, get your soil test, find out what things are there. We get some basic answers from that, but really, it is what provides all of the nutrition for our plants. And by doing that, by having a healthy plant, if you're over here, got an elk over here and he's going, oh, I don't feel very good. You got a big elk over here, which is the wolf gonna go after? Going after the one that is sick, that's already a little bit down under. And the plants are the same way. You will have insects will more go to not the healthiest plant that really does have some defenses. It's gonna go to the one that's already struggling a little bit and just take it down faster. So having a healthy soil, which is what we're gonna talk about, and doing it with clay is the plus. So we've all seen this picture where healthy soil is teeming with life. And so we know there's the big deals, the animals, the voles, the moles, foxes, the macroorganisms that we can see, the insects and the earthworms, and then all the microorganisms. But what is it about those? And that's what it is they are part of this food web. And we've all heard about the food web, but everything starts, the whole world, the whole planet lives and survives because of this first level. All the things that are over here that are in the photosynthesizers. So the plants, their root system, it's getting, as that, about a plant changes its roots, or it has it die off about a third of them a year and puts new ones out. And so as that decomposes, that's the food for all those little microorganisms that then change that into a form of nitrogen or phosphorus or whatever that is available to the plant versus some that are not. So, and then we go through all of the food web. And so we're talking today and addressing more this very basic, but it's the beginning, and then we go through the predators and the grazers and, the bigger animals and things. So, but in 1 tablespoon of healthy soil, there are over 40 to 50 billion living organisms. That's how teeny tiny small they are. So there's only about 8.5 billion people on Earth. So this is in just a tablespoon is that. So where does our soil come from? So we're gonna start with the basics here. So we have this parent material, which is the rock, down below. And as we go through the parent, and we go through these 5 things, it's the weathering, it's topography. Are you at the bottom of a hill or at the top of a hill? How is the water moving that soil down as it gets up? But also climate, and freezing and thawing. Those are what are changing all these layers until we're going from the parent, which here we have limestone, which is why our pH is higher. And so this is just the tectonic plates moving and all that. And we get the subsoil as we get to the higher up. And as we get up to this organic matter in this top 18 inches, that's where we find more of this, all this life, all these billions of microorganisms that are creating the soil that plants need. And so that we need. So these are, biota is the living material, climate, is temperature, rain, things like that, topography, we talked about that, parent material, and then time. We know this has happened over millions of years. We're not going, this limestone down here that we have is not gonna make it to the top, next year. It's gonna be another couple billion years before it gets there. So, and then why, there's I hit on this a little bit, why it's so important. It's because the healthy soil creates the healthy plants, which is what I touched on. And so people would call on the hotline and they would say, well, my plant is a little yellow. I think I didn't water it enough, or I watered it too much, or maybe it needs this fertility or not, you know, so healthy plants are not created by watering, by just watering more, by just adding fertilizer or less fertilizer. You know, it's basically keeping the soil healthy, because that is what's feeding the plant. You are what you eat. So this slide I took from a lawn care presentation I had, but it still applies. The drought tolerance, where we said a healthy soil makes things more drought tolerant. When you have the pore spaces, especially grasses are one where you lose a certain percentage of your roots die each year, and they create these channels that allow water to move down there into the soil instead of running off. They also create food for all of these microorganisms, who then turn around and feed the plant. So having a little bit taller grass blade also means that you've got more photosynthesis happening, deeper roots, and that creates your drought tolerance. So that's how that kind of fits in. And this is the way this presentation, this is kind of a mix of 2 or 3 different presentations, but this is a lot. When I give it to the public and it's just that 20-minute one, it starts out with this. But you don't understand. We have clay soil. You don't have clay soil. You know, I have clay. We all have clay soil. So, but let's look at the facts. You know, clay is the most mineral-rich soil out there. If you had to give me a choice between a sandy soil or a clay soil, I'm gonna take a clay soil every time. And so we're gonna talk about that. So, and clay is not the problem, you know, because there's so many good properties that it has. The negative is the particle size, when that's all you have, and you don't have any aggregation of it by using compost or organic matter, the air pore space is so small that you don't get that oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange between the roots of the plant and the atmosphere. And you don't get water that can percolate down into it. So no matter what your soil is, this is back to the, you know, whatever it is, it can be fixed with organic matter. So like I said, if you have to leave, this is the answer, you know, is add organic matter. So there's soil texture and soil structure. Those are 2 things that we hear about. And you may have, I don't know if they have this in new Master Gardener information, you know, talks or not, but soil texture. So I remember it as the texture goes with, is that triangle. We're gonna see that. So both of them start with T, and it's the percentage of sand, silt, and clay. So it's the mineral matter that's in your soil. Structure describes the arrangement. So all the soil aggregates, are they, and I'll show you a picture. So soil structure is a physical property, okay? And it influences how the water and nutrients flow, how the aeration, because we do need oxygen interchange between the soil and the air. And it's the resistance to soil erosion and compaction, all the good stuff. I do have, because I brought the wrong deal, but I can send it to you. I have a really interesting 20-minute, it's from the Missouri Conservation Soil Service. They did the rain machine. Have any of you guys ever seen the rain deal? No, okay, you'll like it, but it's 20 minutes, so I'll send it to send it here and he can pass it on, because we won't watch it all. We won't watch it at all. But anyway, it shows you how having good aggregates in your soil and having cover crops versus bare soil influences how our nutrients are managed. You know, are they flowing off into the Missouri River and down into the Mississippi and down into the Gulf of Mexico? Or are they staying where our plant roots need them so that, we've got some natural, nutrition there, so. So this is in texture. So texture, remember I said was sand, silt, and clay. A sand particle is like this huge big one, okay? The silt is not this circle, it's all those little dots in there. So they're, infinitesimally smaller than a sand particle. But clay is, there's a dot there, but that's like a billion little pieces of clay. That is not it. So this is what makes up the texture. And that's where we get this triangle. And you can, if you want to know what your own soil texture is in your yard, you can, and it doesn't change. It is there. Doesn't matter what you add to it. It's only measuring sand, silt, and clay. Okay, and what we all kind of like to go and get is this loam or clay loam soil there, and these are the percentages. But if you take some of your soil, put it in a jar, and put water in there and shake it up, what that first layer that you see settling out in that first minute, that's how much sand. So then you just put a line on your jar, and then wait 2 hours and see where's the next separation. That's your silt. And then the next one is clay. And then you're gonna measure this and find the percentages, put it on your chart, and you're gonna see what it is. So, and if yours ends up looking like this is a very heavy sand soil. Loam is more, like we like, and then clay, you see that big layer of clay up on the top. It takes the longest for those tiny little particles to settle. But the soil particles, the sand, silt, and clay all have like little magnets on it. This is my best way. They don't actually have magnets, but they do, but they don't have this little horseshoe one, but that's the one. So a sand particle only has, let's say, 10 magnets on it. Okay. A silt particle maybe has 100 magnets on it, but clay has 10,000 magnets on it. So you can see, and if that magnet is what is attracting, it's a negative, and here's my calcium, here's my magnesium, my potassium, aluminum, all the nutrients that we want, and the micronutrients have, they're either cations or positive or negative ions, whatever. So this is what binds them and holds them to the clay particles, so that when you water, they don't get leached out of the soil into a part where the roots are not, so that the roots can't get down to them. So clay and organic matter are like magnets, and so they have the most potential to retain the nutrients that we want available to our plants. So you can see why clay is the most nutritious soil. But still it has positives. It also has its negatives. How do we deal with that? But whenever you hear somebody talk about cation exchange, I don't know if you guys remember Dr. Stevens out at OREC. He was the flower specialist for the state, if you were a bit of master gardener a while. And so when I first made this presentation, I don't know, like in 2011 or something, he said, Nancy, says you can talk. I said, what should I tell people about soil? He says, you can tell them anything you want, but never mention cation exchange. He says, especially don't mention it at the beginning of your talk, because as soon as it goes over their head, and they'll turn off and their ears will shut down for the whole rest of your presentation. But when I was, all this is kind of self-taught. I take a lot of classes. I'm just a curious person, professional student. But you come back to this cation exchange is the reason that our clay soil is so good. And so you have to figure it out. So it's this magnet kind of generic. These are not exact numbers. These are just representations. It's this magnetism that I thought, that's how I can explain cation exchange capacity. The capacity of your soil to hold all of those positive and negative ions of nutrients is what it is. And you can ask for that on your soil test, but we have clay. We know it's there. It's good, so we don't have to. But what happens when organic matter is added? Why is that the answer. Why is that the Windex? Because in the soil texture, remember I said, it doesn't change, that doesn't change no matter what. You know, we still have the same proportions of sand, silt, and clay. So, but the soil, that's the texture, the soil structure, how it looks is what does change with the addition of organic matter. So organic matter improves the water, nutrient, and air holding capacity of soil and creates aggregates, collections of those. And it's that aggregation that is what is the magic of field. So this is my representation of aggregation. So this is what our clay soil looks like. You know, they're all identical little particles. They're very close together. And if I pour water on the top of this, where does the water go? Nowhere. It goes nowhere. It sits on the top. After a long period of time, it will slowly maybe get down a little bit, but it sits there. And if it's raining, is that water, what happens is it's just sheeting away down, and it's pulling whatever little really fine lightweight soil particles on the top, that's our topsoil, it's taking it with us, and that's what we don't want to happen. But if I can aggregate it, if I can do something to glue those little particles together, now I'm taking my flour and I'm turning it into golf balls. And when I pour water over that, what happens to the water? It actually infiltrates down in, gets to our root system. And if these were like little sponges, it really creates like a sponge. So when you go and you buy a brand new cellulose sponge, and you pick it up and you open it out of the package, you've got all these little air pores in there, those little holes like Swiss cheese, and it's pretty dry. When you get it wet, and I say, squeeze out all the water that you can out of that, and you do, did you really get all the water out? No. No, there still is some dampness there. And that's part of the beauty of what organic matter does in these aggregates, is they do hold water to where once it hits field capacity, it's leaving. But at this point, it's holding it. So that's where we're getting that drought tolerance by being able to keep more water in that top 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches of soil, because we've got all this organic matter in there and we've aggregated these. So the composition of an ideal soil, this is our soil, is we want it to be 50% pore space. And of that 50% pore space, we want half of it to be air, so this is the sponge. And we want half of it to be water. Also, that's that squeeze out as much of, if you have to squeeze out as much, the plant's pulling water, but it is actually holding in all those little pore spaces, it's holding water. And then we have the mineral matter, which that was the sand, silt, and clay. And then we have this 5%. We've always been taught 3 to 5%. And there's a lot of regenerative ag and a lot of things happening anymore where they're saying, you know, it used to be said if you had more than 5, that was bad for the soil. And they're finding that's not necessarily true. There are people that have 8, 9%. I think more than that is probably too much, but you can be having a lot more organic matter. And of this 5, we'll just go with the 5%. Of this 5% organic matter, so this now is another pie chart of that little 5%. We are creating humus, which is what, so we have the fresh residue that we added in there, you know, that we're putting our grass clippings or we're putting our old, you know, whatever it is that is our leaves falling on the ground. And we have that a little 5%, so 5% of that 5% are living organisms. That's that 40 to 50 billion living organisms in a tablespoon of soil. And their job is decomposing that organic matter into a stabilized. Once, you know, we kind of say, you know your compost is done is when you pick it up and you look at it and you cannot identify anything that is in that. You know, that's when it has completely decomposed. And when it does that, there is a portion of it that's called humus, and it's a glue. It's just like a glue, and it's 33 to 50% of that 5%. And it's that glue that creates these aggregates, changes it from the flour to the golf balls. So here we have the humus, and, you know, it's black or brown color. It, you know, that's where we kind of think, gee, the darker our soil, maybe the more healthy it is. This is where that comes from. It binds tiny soil particles, so that improves the structure. You know, it's useful to the microorganisms, it's their food. You know, it's good at storing nutrients. It has high water holding capacity. You know, so all these things that we're wanting, you know, because we recognize that as being good for our plants, to create healthy plants. So that, in essence, improves the plant growth. How many after a rain, you know, have smelled? You go out and you go, oh, that smells so good. I can just smell the soil. You know, I can smell it, and it's the humus. It's a part of the humus. It's one of the microbiotas, organisms in there that puts out that. And that smell is down in the soil. And what happens is when we've got the air pores, you know, going down. And so when we fill all those air pores with water, just like when you put anything in a glass, that water pushes everything. There's something floating on your ice cream's floating on the top of your glass. It's pushing those up. And so when we fill the soil with water, we are pushing the air and the gases down in it out. And so after it rains, that's where we're getting that smell. It's because it's being pushed up and out of the soil. So this is, these are your sand and your silt and your clay and your humus. And when you put those together, that's where you get this aggregate. Yeah, that's the golf ball. And so humus is necessary to create that glue. So soil structure is something that you slowly improve over time. You know, you don't just go out and throw organic matter in it, in your dirt and come back in a week and everything's good, because it takes a while for all of that live, you know, structure to it to happen. So, but it can be destroyed in one overtilling, you know, so you've worked really hard to make those little oatmeal or golf balls. I kind of think it more as oatmeal. And then we go out and we till it to a powder. That's what we used to think was what we should do. But that totally, and you took 2 years, 3 years making that soil. And then a friend comes over and says, I'll help you. And just, you know, in a day ruins this. So tilling your soil, especially rototilling till it's fine, a fine powder, destroys all those aggregates that you were just working to create, and now you're back to flour. And we've all been told, and this is accurate, you know, adding sand to our soil is not something to do. You will see sand in structured football fields and at your high school or at the Chiefs or at the Royals. They're starting with like 3 feet of sand to 6 inches of everything else. You know, so we just can't add enough sand and the weight of it and all the other problems. It's just, don't do it, you know, just add the organic matter. So this is, what does overtilling look like? This is not the best picture. I should have taken this picture before we did a little bit to it, but this is back when we had a rototiller in one of the community gardens I was at. And every year they just wanted to go through and just till until you just saw this powder. And so this is back to that deal. If I pour water on top of this powdery stuff, it's just going to sit on the top or roll off. It's not going to infiltrate. Versus if I've got bigger aggregates, it will go in, and that's what we want. So this is, you know, if you're farming, this is what conventional tillage, we used to think you have to do. Now you're seeing that, oops, I forgot I copied and pasted that over there. I forgot to change the deal. But this is no-till. This is what happens when now they've harvested their corn, they've left the corn stubble, they left it all winter long, and then in the spring or in the fall, then they're coming in and planting wheat or soybeans. You know, on top of that, they're not going and running the big equipment and turning it into a powder again. So how many of you guys have heard of mycorrhizals? Okay, so how many of you guys have put mulch down, wood mulch down around your shrubbery and then moved it a little bit or so, and you saw all this white, you know, or yellowish stuff, and you go, oh my gosh, what is that? And then you'll have one that's a little foamy one that comes to the top that's for a fun name called dog barf, you know, stuff. That is mycorrhizal. Those are fungi. These are all fungi. They're mushrooms, you know, in that family. Those are ones that need to interact with air on top. So they are up, but the bigger ones are down below the soil. And one of the largest living entities in the Pacific Northwest on Earth is one huge patch, covers a couple of states, of this mycorrhizal fungi, you know. And so the green industry, you know, or the nurseries and stuff said, oh, you know, they're starting to see this in Fine Gardening and all these magazines. So let's just sell it. Let's create it. And they called it, this manufacturer called it Mike. And for a while there was a nursery that said, if you would buy this $10, now it's probably $20 little deal of Mike, and incorporate it in your soil, when you plant your tree, instead of a 1-year warranty, we'll give you a 2-year warranty.
Or 5.
Is it now?
5,
Yeah. So I haven't done it in a long time, but I do know that was it. And so, well, why is that? You know, why would they do that? You know, there's also one more recently, we had this, I saw this gal talk who was one of her PhD studies, this mycobloom. And she's actually going out and getting our natural ones from the prairie instead of creating it in the lab and packaging up and selling it. Now, and then there's root grow. I don't even know if that's around anymore. But what the industry was doing was, oh, people are reading about this, so let's sell it to them. It's just like you can buy stuff to put into your compost pile, compost starter. All you gotta do is water it, you know, and it's gonna happen. You don't have to add anything to it. It is there naturally. But there are some plants that don't naturally have fine root hairs, and adding this mic actually does help them get established, because one of the number one things when you buy the average person buys a tree from a nursery, and these are more the evergreens, don't have fine root hairs like the deciduous trees do, but is they go home and they plant it and they don't water it, you know. And so how do you get people to care more for that plant? Is you teach them this, and you give them something that is beneficial to put in there. We're gonna see why it is beneficial. So this is the below ground mycorrhizal fungi. That the above ground one, you know, we talked about, is in your mulch. It needs more oxygen. This is the below ground. So this yellow is the actual root of the plant. All of this white that's around there, that's the mycorrhizal fungi that are in the ground. And you can see what happens. You can see this white and the yellow. They actually attach and go into the root. Let's see if it's actually, so this little circle, that's the root. This is the root. There's a blow up of it. And then you have this big one. And actually the hypha of that fungi actually penetrate into the root. And it's a symbiotic relationship where it says, if you give me photosynthesis, because I'm below ground, I can't photosynthesize. If you give me those nutrients, I will expand my reach out farther than your roots can go. And I will pull in nutrients from deeper in the soil, from farther over, and I'll also bring you water. And so by having this system and having all this, that is what's helping make our plants healthier, you know, and having that bigger reach. And when you come in with a rototiller or with a plow and you destroy all this that's there and turn it into a fine powder, you now have to start all over again. And so this is why we don't want, now, can you do something? I will show you later that, gee, can you still disturb your soil? Are you saying, gee, I can't do anything, I just have to leave things on the top? No, that's not true. You can see how deep this system is, you know, that you still have up here at the top. But this is what we're trying to, and this relationship is all being helped and fed by the compost and stuff that and organic matter that we are incorporating living on the soil. So nearly all soil except heavily cultivated or disturbed already have these. You don't have to buy it, you know. Now, if you were doing a pine tree, I have bought it for little evergreens in my yard to plant. But everything else, it's there. It's, you know, if you build it, they will come, is that saying that is so true. So, and this is where it talks about having the relationship with plants. It uses the plant sugars and carbon reserves as energy source, and then supplies back water and nutrients, especially phosphorus, that it can reach from a farther distance. So this relationship is really just like a secondary root. You know, it's just a helper. So, but rototilling, especially if you deeply rototill, you know, which there used to be when I first moved to Kansas, my next door neighbor did double tilling. She tilled up the top 12 inches, threw it to the side, tilled the next 12 inches, and then just worked her way over. So she had a 24-inch deep till, and she was very organic and very earthy. At that time, we just didn't know what we were doing. So, and then I talked about this. So there are the plants who don't have fine root hairs, so they benefit from these are some trees, shrubs, and especially blueberries. And it is that there are mycorrhizal that are specific to certain plants. So it's not just that generic mic that you buy in the bucket, the blue bucket on the first one. You know, the prairie plants and certain prairie plants have certain mycorrhizal that they need. So the blueberries are one that is specific to blueberries. And so I suggest people never buy bare root blueberries. You know, pretty much we have to baby them here and do a lot of soil manipulation anyway for pH problems. But I always say you're better off buying something that's already in soil, because when you get that potted plant, it is coming already. You know, if it came from the Pacific Northwest or someplace where blueberries are naturally grown, the soil that they're putting in with that pot before they send it to you has that inoculant, has that rhizome, that fungi already in it. And so that's how you're gonna get it to your soil, because it's not natural here. Now, I don't know does it die out because our pH and some of the other properties of our soil just are not good for blueberries, right? And not all plants respond to it. Corn and tomatoes love this relationship. Leafy greens, especially the brassicas, you know, in studies done by graduate students, they said they saw no positive or negative response to it. And spinach and beets actually killed out the fungus. So not every plant needs it, but every plant will benefit from it if it needs it. You know, it's one of those, if you're buying ladybugs to put in your garden and if there's no aphids, they're just gonna fly off, you know. So, but if there's aphids, the native ones are gonna come in, you know. So So life, and science balances itself out. So this is just kind of to let you know that this is like the soil profile. And so most, of all those 40 to 50 billion, biota, the little biology in the soil, they need oxygen. And so the oxygen is highest up here in the top 6 inches or so. And so you're going to see, this is the oxygen levels and stuff. So you're gonna see it highest here. And so 90% of your oxygen is in the top 18 inches, and that's where most of your roots are. So when you see a tree fall over in the storm, you don't see, there's a few anchor roots that go deep, but they mostly go out and they're still in that top, part of the soil. They're not, when you see a washout on a stream or something, you don't see them 10 feet down. They're more up there because they need that oxygen that's in the top part. So to add organic matter, you can add a lot of what you'll see, especially if you've already been working on it and you're just adding it, new organic matter each year. You can add it just in the top 1 inch of the soil, and you don't even have to turn it in because the biology of the soil is going to do that. But you can do it 6 to 8 inches if you want, but you need to do it to the entire bed. If you're planting a tree and the tree came in with a root ball like this, it actually in reality had roots that went out, and when they got dug in the field, they chopped all those off. They chopped all those fine root hairs off that if it did have any, and now you have just this ball. And if you only dig the hole that you're going to plant it in that same size, it's hard for it to break out of that little hole that you did. So you need to, if you're doing a new bed, amend the whole bed with compost, do the whole thing and not just where you're planting that individual plant. So you can spread it on the top, like I said, a couple inches on the top of the soil. You can mix it in, and really I probably would not go 6 inches. I wrote this a while ago. So I would really do maybe the top 4 inches. I'll show you what I do. But I tend to more dig it in with a garden fork. In the fall is when I add my organic matter because it's not instant. When you put it down, anytime you put down an organic, pelletized chicken fertilizer or blood meal or anything, that is not in a form that the plant can use. It has to be digested by all of this life in the soil and pooped out, or the animal dies, and decomposes itself to change it from, and I'll always mix it up. One's a nitrite, one's a nitrate. It comes in one form of nitrogen. And by being digested and going through that deal, it dies and it turns to the other, and that's what then is available to the plant. And that doesn't happen overnight. So usually we improve. I do, like I said, I do a lot of vegetable gardening and food insecurity. So we do all of our amending in the fall. We will do, we will put sulfur down to try and lower the pH under 7. I don't know if I left in here why that's good. But we'll do all that, and then it has all winter long for all of that to be working and decomposing and that whole process, that whole science happening. And so then in the spring, then I'm ready, but if you leave it on the top, over time, the earthworms and other soil life will mix it in. So can you get that? I have a real quick, it's a 2-minute video. I don't know, because I'm talking too long, if I'll do the whole 2 minutes, but we're going to start it. This is a 30-day, like an aquarium that they put leaves on the top. They put 3 colors of sand so that you could see how when this worm comes down this way, this layer of soil can now get mixed into these deeper layers. So this is, worms actually have like little mouths, teeth, but they actually come up and they will grab organic matter and pull it down into the soil. So that's how they are doing the work for you of incorporating it in. So you can see, you see that there's it's easier to crawl here than here. But this guy did go down, and so all these channels also allow water to go in, and organic matter that they are pulling in. Now, watch the top here. You saw how full that was of leaves, and after 30 days, you can see that there's practically nothing. So this is how the earthworms are doing that. And there are parts of the United States that, like in Minnesota, when you go, you heard you don't throw your fishing worms out onto the ground. And in a heavily forested area, the way that that forest rejuvenates itself is once the trees get really big and they get hit by lightning and they die, wind comes in, they knock them over. Now there's a light, there's more sunlight that's coming to the soil. There are acorns or whatever the seed is of that tree on the soil floor, just waiting for the conditions to be right. But it's sitting on, then nothing pulled it down and took it underground. If they took it underground, they ate it. So the one that acorn that's sitting on the top, the way it is getting its moisture and stuff is being covered with leaves. So if those leaves are not there because we had too many earthworms, then that little seed now the deer can just walk by and eat it, you know, or the mice or whatever. So we need a leaf layer in our forests in order for the new generation, and we get that, you know, 50, 100-year cycle of tree growth coming. And so that's why, especially where I first read about it was in Minnesota, where they said it's illegal to throw your fishing worms out because it totally will destroy their forests up there. And there's a lot of fishing because they have so many lakes. Everybody likes to go there and go fishing. So, so what I do is, like I said, right before the winter, when I put my garden to bed, you know, I save my green beans, you know, stuff, and my sweet potato vines, everything. I mow over them and I throw them back on top of the soil as soon as they're done. I don't take them to the compost. I really have trouble making a compost pile in my backyard because I don't pick up my grass or my leaves or anything. I'm the guy who's driving around in the middle of the night picking up the neighbor's leaves and taking them out because I mulch mow everything. But whatever you're doing, so we take that stuff, we don't put it in, we just lay it on the top of the soil to create a more natural mulch. And then in the winter time, I just come and I turn it over in big chunks. So they're just, and then I let the winter, the freeze and the thaw of the winter, the same thing that makes the potholes in the road, I leave that to be able to start getting it into and breaking down those big clods. So I'll still have some clods in the spring. You know, the organic matter for pretty much will mostly be gone. You know, if I use straw or anything, I just, you know, I'll use newspaper and straw around my tomatoes. We're turning all that over and just flipping it over so it's under the top, down in the ground, and just turning it over. But we're not going deep. We're only doing the top 4 inches or so. And then I'll come along with, I will use this to try and level out that seed bed. And then I never, you know, these were originally sold to me as weeders. You know, you're supposed to just go along and be able to weed, and that never worked. And so you ended up with a lot of them in garage sales. Yeah. And so, or you gave them to your friends, or you gave them so somebody else could do it. But what I did find is they're really good. If you're planting carrots or beets or anything with little tiny seeds, this is really good to be able to roll back and forth and prep just that top inch or two, you know, of your seed bed to get it fine enough so that those tiny little seeds don't fall 3 inches down into the soil. So, and then we did the bioturbanization. So this is back to where I said, when you're adding compost, where I said, do a big bed, because if you just dig a hole, and this is your clay soil over here, and you just dig a hole and plop your plant in there, you basically just, when it rains, it's staying in that little nice hole that you put all the amended soil and the soil that came with the plant. And all this is clay out here. It's just like planting it into a pot. And so you'll end up with water problems. So you need to amend a wide area. So, and it's not a one and done. You don't do it every year. I had back to my first year of being on a hotline where the guy said, I am tired of having to put wood mulch down, every year. He says, what do you think about the new rubber mulch? He says, I'm just gonna do that. Cause he said, then I never have to do it again. And I said, well, we won't talk about, many, many years ago, we didn't talk so much about the oil and stuff leaching into the soil, but it was like, I said, well, the reason that you put 4 inches on in the spring and it's not there, in November is because the soil biology is doing what it's supposed to do and feeding that plant, and that's the food. And so you have to keep redoing it. So it's not a one and done. Just realize that you're going to be doing it every year, and every year you are creating healthier and healthier soil. So back to where we at time-wise. Okay, we're not doing that. So we always tell people, get a soil test. The most important thing you learn, and this is how to get a soil test, you can find it on any of the extension websites. And it's one thing you can Google, and you will pretty much 97% get the same answer as to how to gather your soil, for a soil test. You want to take a couple of samples around, and you don't want to have your vegetable bed mixed in with your lawn, mixed in with your shrub border. Those are 3 different plants that have 3 different needs, and you're going to get an answer back for, you have to say, what are you trying to do? And so you need those to be separate soil tests. So, but what you do get back is you do get back your phosphorus and your potassium, and for the most, and your pH. And the reason that I don't care so much about almost anything where I'm gardening, because potassium and phosphorus is very high. So usually that's not an issue. You're just needing nitrogen, because nitrogen is the #1 mineral used by plants. And so it's constantly being depleted and needs to be replenished. And so that's why you took a soil sample today and you took one next week and you sent it in and you said, I don't want nitrogen, you're going to find you get different answers. Especially if it's like a vegetable garden or a lawn in the rapidly growing time of year where the grass is really pulling in needing a lot of nitrogen. You're going to get different answers. So pretty much it's a general deal. You're going to have to add that, but it's the pH that tells you. Remember that magnetism that we talked about, clay soil being the most, nutrient rich. We have plenty of iron in our soil, but we also have a lot of iron chlorosis. Let's just say in our oak trees. There are some other things we see iron chlorosis in, but it's mainly our oaks, especially pin oaks that we see it. And it's because this is the different slide that I have. So this is the ideal range right here, is between like 6.2 and 6.8. And where they pick that is where, on the average, if you added all these up, where is the pH where these bars are the widest, which means that nutrient is most available to the plant. And so that's it. The soil tests that come into Johnson County Extension pretty much come in at 7.8. They're going to be a little different if you're up in an older part of town where you've had a lot of synthetic fertilizers and leaf litter over the last 100 years, because those houses are 100 years old, or 80 or 70 or 80 to 100 years old. Those things lower the pH naturally, or they create that. So you may not have, if we're going to have a soil test come in at 6.2, it's going to be Roland Park, or Mission Hills or something. It's going to be that Northeast where people have been longer. Out in the farm fields, you know, it's higher. But look what happens with iron. The higher, you can see it's here, and this is that magnetism. So you know how a magnet can be really weak, that won't even hold a single piece of paper onto your refrigerator? Or you can get a really good one and it'll hold 5 pieces of paper on your refrigerator. You can open the door, close the door, and it doesn't fall on the ground. So iron is something that really, the higher the pH, the stronger the magnetism of that soil particle. So the iron is there. The plant just can't pull it off because it has too strong of a magnet. So if we can get the pH down, that iron now becomes available. And that's the same with all of these. These are, like, if you were really low on this, you wouldn't have as much potassium, you know, and especially phosphorus. Phosphorus is also one thing where I think, gee, I must not have enough phosphorus because I don't think I have the slide in here. No. I see my leaves are purple. That's a sign of low phosphorus. But if you go to one of the hardware stores outside and they've got their tomato plants out and we get a cold snap, you're gonna go and look and you're gonna say, these aren't green. These tomatoes have a lot of purple hue to them. And it's because temperature also is a factor. So the colder it is, the more that phosphorus becomes unavailable. And so the plants get this little purple looking. It's still fine. Buy that tomato plant if you want to buy it too early. And once it warms up or you bring it in the house or do whatever, it'll be just fine because now that phosphorus will be available. But all that has to do, you know, that's temperature, but for the most part, it has to do with pH. So what I look for is what's the pH. That's what I want out of the soil test. So anyway, that's it. Any questions? Do you like your clay soil now?
Yes.
That is another, never say, but I have clay soil. Say, I have clay soil and I can fix it. So.
I wanted to ask Corey, what are soil tests currently cost here in Wyandotte?
So everyone who lives in Kansas City, Kansas gets a free one, and we're looking at expanding that out to Bonner, and the rest of Wyandotte as well. So I'll let you all know as soon as that comes through, but I believe that's covered through a grant that the whole county will be covered. But I think it's for the gardener's package, $18.50 or $22.50, I'm not sure, for additional soil tests.
Yeah,
Does that include for one soil test, or if they have to have one for vegetable and one for lawn, one for shrubs?
So yeah, it's just one.
You get one
So
free.
Yeah.
what's the fee for the other?
I think it's, yeah, I believe $18.50 or $22.
Okay.
Okay, so, and the more you pay, that's where you'll get that cat in exchange. And you can ask for nitrogen. It's just gonna give you that snapshot of that soil on that day that you sent it in and you didn't bake it in your oven to dry it out because it was too wet. You didn't do anything that changed it. You didn't put your soil into a rusty bucket, all your 5 samples in a rusty bucket and stir them up and send them in. You took it and put it into a nice plastic bucket. So this is the video that I brought and I can't get on, I have it on my computer, but I can't, the password that you have around the corner for getting onto your internet doesn't work. So, but, this is one that I don't know, can you send it out?
Yeah, I can email.
Okay, so I will send it and get it. This is the Natural Resources, the Conservation District that did this rain machine. Kansas has them also, and this one was specifically for, the way he brought it was for pastures, but it applies to everything. And it's why does no-till, it shows you what happens when you don't have anything covering your soil over the winter. You know, and we get rains, where does all of that topsoil nutrients go? You know, and so, you know, it created the Dust Bowl, you know, in Kansas, umpteen years in the 30s, 20s and 30s. And then it shows what does rotational grazing do? What does no-till do? How does that, at the very first half of it, which it's easier to explain it when it's running, You might have to watch that half twice. But the more important part that I wanted to show for this, the second 6 minutes, it's 18 minutes, but the last 6 minutes is they have. I'm gonna email it to you, a picture. Okay, but, it is, this guy has two like flower vases, clear vases, very vertical. And they've got a little wire hail screen, up in the top pocket. And he takes a clod of soil that he goes through the fence line to his neighbors and digs up, because this guy just runs it with a plow and a harrow and disc and everything, and it's just a powder. So he goes and finds a clump of that, and these are filled with water, and he puts that in one of those two tubes. And in the other one, we were at an organic farm, he went to the patch just behind where we were all sitting and watching this presentation, and he just dug up a clump and put it in the other one. And then you go for this 6-8 minutes. And so it's just water, nothing's disturbing it, there's no rain pounding on it. The one that came from his neighbor with the high tillage, with no aggregates left to it, no mycorrhizal, no organic matter for much. By almost to the end, that whole column of water, you can't see through because it has disintegrated. And what that means is when you get a heavy rain, it's also washing into our streams and rivers and down to the Gulf of Mexico, creating the dead zone, which that's another talk, but anyway. Or another piece of talk. The one that has this organic farm stuff, when he first puts it in there, a couple big clumps fall off just because, he grabbed it and they're gonna have some loose. It doesn't move the whole time in this presentation. It is holding together. It is holding that water, it is holding those nutrients. And so it is, it's staying there so that those plants have that available. And so it's really a cool deal. So, all right. All right, good.
Good to go.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and for being flexible with rescheduling due to our extreme weather conditions.
Well, I'm just kind of an analytical nerd on this, so I hope it wasn't too dry. I hope it was interesting.
It was fine.
So.
Is there anybody that tries to use gypsum anymore to try it?
Okay,
I've heard that, K-State, I think it said that, you're wasting your time.
right, and here's why. Okay, so how many of you have, this is better for cooks, how many of you have made gravy? Okay, so you cooked your pan, whatever it was, your bacon, whatever, that gave you this grease. Okay, and then, you're gonna put flour in it, okay? So if you put your flour in there and stir it all up, get it all stirred into, it's turning into kind of a paste. What you have done is you have encircled every little flour particle back to our flour and golf balls. You have encircled it with grease so that now when you add your milk or water, it can disperse, okay? And so what gypsum does is it encircles all of those little particles. So it will let your area drain. It doesn't improve your soil. But if you have, because usually people will say, well, I put it in this spot that was always wet and it worked. And I said, but how long did it work? Usually it works about 6 months, and then enough of it washes away that you have to do it again. And they said, that's right, it did last 6 months. So that's why K-State says that is a Band-Aid, but it is not a solution. So does it work? Yeah. But is it the solution? No, it's just a patch. So you're better off adding, you know, organic matter to that area, trying to do that. You know, some places you just put a French drain, you know, if it's really a wet spot, just to try and, yeah, plant a willow, plant a willow. So, any other questions? All right, thank you.
You did a great job, thanks.
So, have you